Alright, welcome back to Truck Camper Cooking. This will be another episode in the back of my homemade aluminum truck camper. And today we have a fun one. We are going to be comparing 3 different methods of cooking rice. So this will apply to van life setup, truck camper cooking, any type of cooking while camping. I want to show 3 different ways of cooking rice and the different setups. One will be a traditional stove with a pot. Next, I have a smaller portable butane stove with a ceramic rice pot. And the third will be a small electric rice cooker, which I will power off my inverter. Alright, so this first method is going to be very simple. I'm basically going to be using this butane stove, which uses a Coleman butane fuel bottle. It's low profile. I have a vintage stainless steel pot. It's pretty simple. I just wanted to have one of the first methods to be a very simple and effective rice cooking setup that is easy to make. This can apply to anybody with a stove. It doesn't have to be butane. It can be propane too. The second method of cooking rice that I'll be using is what's called a donabe. This is a Japanese ceramic rice pot, and you basically place it over some type of stove or some type of heat source, and the ceramic pot will cook the rice throughout. The third and final method of cooking rice is actually just a small rice cooker. I will be powering this with an inverter, but the cool thing about this one is it's only a 200 watt rice cooker. Alright, so pretty much the first step for each of these is going to be getting the rice in the water into each of these containers. I will show you how each of these stoves fires up and how this electric one turns on. So for now, let's get the rice in the water into each of these pots and containers. I did want to highlight this container real quick. This is a nice rice container that I use at the house and also for truck camping. It includes a integrated measuring cup, and I find it a good way to store the rice and have it at the ready for any time I'm camping and traveling, and even just at the house. It's nice to have it in an airtight container like this with a measuring cup on top. For this test, I am not going to have the opportunity to wash the rice. Shame on me. That's okay. If you're at home, I would suggest washing your rice. Now for the ceramic option, this is called a donabe. It's a ceramic pot, and I don't know the best methods of using this. I've used this 5 to 10 times and I have enjoyed it. I do use these inserts. This is like a parchment type paper insert, and I find that it helps prevent the rice from sticking. So I'm going to get this inside the ceramic pot, then place the water and rice. For the ceramic rice cooker, I'm actually going to do a smaller amount of rice, about half a cup or less. I just don't want to overload this cooker. I'm doing a bit of meal prepping at the moment, and I'm going to have quite a bit of rice from this effort, but I want to show you guys all these different methods. So let's get about a half a cup into the ceramic pot. Alright, so for the traditional method of a stove with a normal pot, I'm going to be placing 2 cups of water and 1 cup of rice in. I'll put the water in first and bring that up to a boil, and then I'll add in the rice and start a timer. So I'm going to try and have all of these methods going at the same time. They might be a bit staggered. We'll see if I can keep up with it, but let's just see how it goes. This is a 1 cup measuring cup. Alright, so we have 2 cups of water in our traditional pot over the stove. I'm going to go ahead and add the water to the donabe ceramic rice pot, and also the electric rice cooker. I'll get that water level up to spec. The electric rice cooker sure looks like a lot of water. We'll see how that goes. I did put 1 cup of rice in, and I brought the water level up to the 1 cup mark. So let's get this electric one plugged in, then we can fire up each of these butane stoves. Now this is a part of my 12-volt electrical system. I have not made a video on this yet. I will at some point here soon. But I basically have a 200 amp hour lithium battery underneath the bench of my camper. And the wiring comes to this wall, and the inverter runs off of the battery. So it's a fairly straightforward setup, but this allows me to have a 110 inverter and power household appliances like this. Now this is a very small rice cooker. It should draw a very low wattage, which will help. But let's go ahead and get the electric rice cooker fired up. This electric rice cooker is pretty simple. It is a low wattage unit. There's only one button. It is to turn on the cook cycle. Once the cook cycle finishes, it will kick into a keep warm mode. I've used this one time at the house. Now we're going to put it to the test in the truck camper. Next step is to fire up these 2 butane stoves. I do have the windows open and the vent fan open and on. So let's get these butane stoves fired up and see how this process goes. Last but not least, I'm going to fire up the middle butane stove, which will start the cooking of the ceramic pot. I will start a timer for this. This will be a rough timer, about 10 or 15 minutes. I just want to keep track of how much time has passed, and then I will eyeball it and check it as it goes.
Well, she likes you. She wants to follow you.
Alright, so I do have a 15-minute timer going. I will keep an eye on this and keep an eye on the ceramic rice pot. This is the one I'm most concerned about. I just need to make sure that the temperature is okay. The electric setup should be fairly straightforward. And finally, the traditional method with a pot should be straightforward as well, but I'll need to keep an eye on it, add in the rice, and see how long that takes as well. I'm pretty excited to be doing this test. I've always wanted to compare some products and see how they work, especially in a truck camper cooking situation. So my goal here is to inspire you guys to get out and cook, you know, whether it's at your house or camping, truck camper setup. Whatever your setup is, I find it enjoyable to test out different pieces of cooking equipment, see how they work, learn from them, and apply that to your cooking skills. It's something that I enjoy. Alright, final addition of rice. I'm going to add in 1 cup to my 2 cups of water. It's just about to be boiling, so I'm going to put that in, turn it down on low, put the lid on, and let it simmer. Alright, let's take a check. Everything's been going for about a minute. Let's see how each one is doing. Alright, I don't want to open the lids too many more times. I want to make sure that they all have the proper heat and steam and cook in the right method. So I'm going to let these be. I will check back in with you guys in about 5 to 10 minutes and see the progress of how each method is doing. Alright, it's been about 12 to 14 minutes with the ceramic rice pot. I am going to go ahead and cut the heat and let that finish residually cooking. The water content inside is not too great, so I don't want to overcook it. One of the cool features of the ceramic rice pot, though, is you do get a more crispy bottom texture. That's because you're applying all of your heat to the bottom base point of the ceramic pot. It's going to radiate through and provide heat to the whole pot, but your largest point of contact with the heat is on the bottom, and it does give you a more crispy bottom, which I find to be pretty nice. The traditional pot is looking pretty good. The only one lagging behind right now is this electric one. We will see how much time it takes. This might be a pro and con for you guys, whether you want to have a simple butane setup or run a small electric setup with an inverter. You know, to each their own on their setups. I find if you do have a simple electrical system that works and has enough capacity to run a small appliance like this, it is pretty nice to have that feature. You know, I have solar on the roof charging this setup. It is pretty self-sufficient. So depending on your setup in your van or truck or your camping gear will influence what type of fuel source and what type of method that you want to use for this. Alright, so the electric rice cooker is making some good progress. There is a lot of steam coming out of it. It is definitely at a boiling point. What you hear right there is the inverter kicking on. That is one thing you have to put up with an electrical setup like this. It is pretty cool though to have a 110 appliance working in your truck camper just off of a 12-volt battery and an inverter. So the other two methods with the traditional pot and the ceramic rice pot are pretty much done. I've had the ceramic rice pot off of the heat for about 5 to 10 minutes. It is still very warm to the touch, which is a big plus of the ceramic rice pot. It does retain that heat and finishes off the cooking cycle, so you don't have to have the butane on the whole time. It's just about the first 10 to 15 minutes to get it nice and boiled and heat up that ceramic pot. Traditional method, I'm actually not a big fan of a traditional method res cooking. I guess it depends on who you're asking for traditional. I just call it traditional because it is the most basic way to use a standard kitchen pot, boil water, put rice in it, and slowly cook it. I am a big fan of an electric rice cooker. I use one at home all the time. This is a new one for me. It is a smaller capacity, but it does seem to work well, especially in an environment like this where you do need to keep the appliance lower wattage. That helps with the use of the inverter, and it helps to not run through your battery capacity. Alright, the traditional pot method here is complete. I just took a sample and ate some rice. It does feel fully cooked through, so I'm going to cut the heat to this, let the residual steam cook inside, and hopefully that will help with some of the sticking at the bottom. So method 1, butane is off. Method 2, ceramic pot, the butane has been off for about 10 to 15 minutes. The pot still is pretty nice and warm. I'll give you guys a look inside. So I do want to try a sample of the ceramic pot rice. I hope I cooked it for the proper time. We'll see here in a second. It is definitely a drier consistency compared to the pot with this lid on it, but this does look like it is cooked through. Let's see. Traditional pot, rice cooked through. Ceramic pot, rice cooked through. The electric pot, I'm going to wait for the cook cycle to turn off and turn into the keep warm setting. Then I'll give that a fair shot. I'm going to go ahead and cut the power to the electric pot and let it cool down. That way the inverter stops making noise and I can give you guys my conclusion. Alright, so I'm not necessarily going to rate each one of these. I will talk about the pros and cons of each method. But I will say first and foremost, all of these methods are great methods of cooking rice in a van or truck camper scenario. The one method that will be a little bit more concise group or not available to everyone is going to be the electric pot. Not everybody is going to have a full battery and inverter setup, and that's okay. There are good methods to use for simple cooking of rice. That would be a traditional butane stove or propane stove with a pot. This is a very tried and true method that's been, I don't need to explain why this is simple and effective, but it is, and we'll leave it at that. This method of the ceramic rice pot, I find to have a little bit more excitement and enjoyment out of it. It does create rice, it does cook rice in a little bit different method than your typical options. So I find this one has a cool factor to it. Maybe that's just me, but I would say that all of these methods are good, and they are good viable options for cooking rice while you're camping, in your van, or in your truck camper. If you guys do have any questions about any of these setups, I'm happy to answer them in the comments or make a follow-up video highlighting these certain products. I will put a link to pretty much all of these parts and products down in the description. I really appreciate you guys making it this far into the video. If you do have any questions or have a product that you would like me to use in the truck camper, maybe something you want me to review, let me know down in the comments. I'd be happy to take a look. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a great day.